What's going on, guys? My name is Kalen Vasher, and you are now listening to the Kalen Vasher Show. Before we get started, just want to give a quick shout out to everybody listening. You guys are much appreciated. As always, if you want to connect with me and talk about anything and everything basketball or sports in general, you can always follow me on social media. On Instagram, that'll be at TKVS Podcast, and on Twitter at Kalen Vasher Show. Now, I know, guys, it's been a while. It's been a lot longer than I would have liked it to been. I apologize for not dropping any episodes or anything over the past few months. But I feel like I took a nice little break just to reconnect and actually get back to a point where I wanted to talk about anything. I kind of felt like I was going to be forcing episodes out if I didn't take my break. And so now I'm back, I'm good, and I'm ready to talk more NBA basketball with you guys. As you know, we're at the midpoint way of the season as the All-Star break just happened this past weekend. And with that, there's a lot that we have to unpack, a lot of big news, including Blake Griffin on a new team, unfamiliar face at the top of the West. And so I feel like I haven't talked to y'all in a while, so this is going to be a pretty good episode, and I'm really, really excited. So let's go ahead and jump into it. So we're going to start today's show with the Utah Jazz. And the question that I have for the Utah Jazz is, are they really for real? I mean, they have secured the best record in the league right now and in the Western Conference headed into the All-Star break with a 27-9 record. They're also third in the league at around 116 points per game as a team, and they're fourth in the league in holding their opponents to only about 108 points. So, you know, as good as they've looked, it's just tough for me to actually believe that they're real. And I really hate to say that because they really do have some good pieces over there, but you know, some of those pieces have been there the past few years, and they haven't been able to figure it out. Rudy Gobert is still playing at a high level. Donovan Mitchell is playing at a super high level, and they were both all-stars at their respective positions. And so they've gotten better each year they've been in the league, so that's a no-brainer that, you know, the Jazz are going to get better as a result. But at the same time, the Western Conference is so stacked with teams like the Lakers, the Suns, and the Clippers that it's just hard to you know, even though they are the first overall seed as of right now, it's hard to say that that's going to stay. And even if they make the playoffs, if they really have a real chance of even reaching the conference finals, because like I said, you still have to run into one of those three teams on your way to get there. And, you know, I just don't know if they have the pieces. Mike Conley was an all-star, finally getting the respect that he deserves. He also put up a great showing in the three-point shootout, which we'll talk about a little bit later. But I don't know. It's just hard to tell if the Jazz are really for real or if they're just having a really, really good start to the season. Honestly, if I had to guess and pick where they would finish right about now, I would either pick them to finish second or third in the West. They have a little bit of, I think that they'll have a little bit of a drop off after the All-Star break. It's just tough for them, as would it be for any team to continue playing as well as they have all the way throughout the year. You know, there's still going to be some injuries that might happen to pop up. COVID is always in the question. As harsh of a reality it is, it's just how it is. Joel Embiid and Ben Simmons both missed the All-Star game after, you know, contract tracing. So, you know, it's just never a way of telling if the season's going to go as smoothly as it did in the first half of the season. So I'm just looking ahead, and, you know, as harsh of a reality it is, you know, it is something that can pop up. And then even with that, they still have a pretty solid schedule to go through after the All-Star break. I mean, it's not a crazy schedule with a lot of tough teams, but they do have a lot of solid teams that they'll have to play, including Memphis, and they'll still have to play teams like the Lakers, Warriors, Nets, and the Suns a few more times coming down towards the end of the year. So, you know, of course, I think that they're still a good team. I'm not saying that they're a bad team by any stretch of the imagination, but again, I do think that it's tough for any team to play well throughout the year. And if I could compare them to any team that we've seen in years past, I would have to go with probably that 2014, 2015, or I can't remember what year it is, 2015, 2016, one of those years, the Hawks. I remember the Cavs were supposed to run away with the East that year, and the Hawks ended up having the best record in the East. I don't think they had it in the entire NBA. I think that was the year the Warriors went 73-9. But, you know, if I could relate it to anything, I would have to say them. And I do think that the Utah Jazz have a way better roster than the Hawks had that year, even though they were a really good team. But, I don't know. I think this could be one of those fluke years. And then plus you have to remember teams like the Lakers, they're coming off of the shortest offseason turnaround in NBA history. I mean, you win the championship in October, September, and then had to turn around and start it up in January. Like, of course, you're not going to have your legs all the way with you for real. People are still going to be putting up with stuff and injuries like we've seen to Anthony Davis. So, I think that the Lakers are still the best team in the West. The Clippers have been moving really, really quietly this year. I think that they turned it up a little bit after the All-Star break. So really excited to see how the Western Conference ends up playing out, especially because Kristaps Porzingis has also been in a few trade talks with the trade deadline coming up here in the next few weeks. So, a lot of big moves could happen in the Western Conference in the next couple of days that could shake up the entire league. And with that, let's transition over to what the Lakers are doing. And, the Lakers are third in the West right now. And you can attribute that to the Anthony Davis injury for sure. I still think LeBron James is playing at a pretty high level. But, of course, he came into the season playing the lowest level of minutes he had in his career. And so now with Anthony Davis being out, everything is on LeBron. And then whenever Anthony Davis comes back, everything is on him. But it's tough to say how he's even going to play whenever he comes back. So the Lakers' full rest of the season is going to be on those two guys, LeBron and Anthony Davis. And I do think that they'll have to go out and get another role player to complement LeBron and Anthony Davis, especially now that the Nets have picked up Blake Griffin, which I'll have to talk about that in a minute because, man, we'll get into it. But I think that LeBron's going to have to turn it up a notch. Like I said, he's been playing really good basketball lately, but I think he's going to have to start playing those extreme amounts of minutes that we've seen he did in years past. The Lakers no doubt struggled coming down the stretch headed towards the playoffs. The All-Star break. But, with no timetable still on when Anthony Davis will return, they need LeBron to play at the high level that he has in years past. And I know that in a couple games headed up into the All-Star break, he did, especially with them playing in like 2 or 3 back-to-back overtime games, that he was playing high amounts of minutes. But I think if you're the Lakers staff, you have to look into that as being something that is a night in, night out thing for LeBron. I know a lot of teams are playing back-to-backs, and you're getting teams, you're getting 2 games in 3 nights. So I think that LeBron's going to have to take that challenge on. If the Lakers want to still be competitive and they want that top spot, then Anthony Davis has to get back healthy. And not only when he gets back healthy, he has to play at an extremely high level. But until he gets back, LeBron James has to play at a near MVP perfect level. But back to the role player thing, the past couple of days, there's been talks about Andre Drummond's contract possibly being bought out by the Cavaliers. And I heard that the Lakers have been a team that he's been linked to. Dennis Schroeder, of course, he's been about the 3rd scoring option for them, and I know he missed a couple games headed into the All-Star break and eventually did come back to finish off, I think, their last 2 or 3 games. But I think that they still need to go out and get another scorer. As good as Dennis Schroeder and Kentavious Caldwell-Pope are, and don't even get me started on the way that Kyle Kuzma played in his past couple of games. Kyle Kuzma was playing great basketball, shooting the ball at a high clip. Every time that I turned on a Lakers game, it seemed as though he was knocking down everything he's putting on. And I, for one, am somebody who has criticized Kuzma's play in the past couple of years. He does sometimes he gets into like some irate shots, but the past couple games that I had seen from him heading into the All-Star break, he was playing really smart basketball, really, really good shot selection, and so I'm really impressed from what I've seen from Kuzma headed into the All-Star break. And then Talen Horton-Tucker, who I think honestly has the potential to become an all-star one day. And I know that it sounds kind of crazy, but for him, the leap that he made from his rookie to sophomore season is just crazy. And it's not even like he's out dropping 30 every night, but it's just the progression. And, you can't beat progression like that. Whenever there's a player that can literally go from playing G League and getting 2 or 3 minutes on an NBA floor a night to actually turning those into solid minutes and jumping over people in the rotation to play at the high level that he's playing at now, I think you can't beat that. So I think Talen Horton-Tucker is going to be really, really big for the Lakers coming down the stretch. I think that with AD being there, he'll start to play a lot more minutes, which I think Frank Vogel and Jason Kidd and that staff have probably even looked into while we've been on break and while the players have gotten their break to probably try and get him some more minutes. So I expect to see a lot more of Kuzma and Horton-Tucker coming down the stretch. But like I said, the deadline is March 25th, so they still have a few more weeks to make moves. And so the Lakers, I expect them to make a splash. I did read something today, and I want to say it was off of CBS Sports, that they said if the Lakers were to make a trade, that Montrezl Harrell could be somebody that's up for grabs. Montrezl Harrell has played really good for the Lakers. He's an inconsistent jump shooter at times, but he's a former Sixth Man of the Year, and so he's a really good player. But I would be shocked if they moved him, but I would also see it being something necessary depending on what they are trying to get. One guy that I would love to see them trade would probably be Marc Gasol, just because he's getting older. He's not the most mobile big. He passes the ball really well. He's a really good rebounder, and he can knock down the outside jumper. But I feel like in today's NBA, you have to be able to guard multiple positions. And I feel like he gets stuck on that 4 or 5 spot. And even sometimes 4 or 5s are a little too quick for him depending on who he's matched up with that night. Like we seen with Draymond a couple weeks ago whenever they matched up. So if the Lakers were to move anybody, I think it would have to be Marc Gasol. But I do think it would be tough to find some value and actually get a solid player for Marc Gasol, but we will see. Now, I want to talk about All-Star Sunday night, and I saw on Twitter, I saw all the tweets, and I saw everybody talking about how boring it was, and this All-Star weekend sucked, but honestly, to me, it wasn't that bad. I mean, everything was compacted into one Sunday night with the skills competition and the three-point shootout both being held prior to the All-Star game, while the dunk contest took place during halftime. And for me, I personally don't think it was boring. It just wasn't the same thing that we're used to. Steph Curry put on an absolute show during the three-point shootout, and he's hands down. I remember I was watching it on my phone because I wasn't at home yet. And it was just like watching him whenever the first round, he put up, I think, 31. And it was just like watching him shoot the ball. It was just like every shot that he put up, I just expected it to go in. And when he missed, it shocked me more than whenever he would go on like a 5-6 straight streak of him knocking down shots. Like, whenever you're that good of a player to where every time you shoot the ball, I expect, or as fans and analysts, we expect for the ball to go in, I don't think that's anything that could be taken lightly. Damian Lillard is the only other player in the NBA that I feel the exact same way about. When those two shoot the ball, I'm more shocked when it doesn't go in, no matter where they shoot it from, no matter how far behind the three-point line they are. Whenever they shoot the ball and they miss, I am genuinely shocked because that's how good of shooters and scorers that they are. But yeah, he put on a show during the three-point shootout. Sabonis put on for the big guys and won the skills competition, which to me, I would like to see them bring back possibly the, I think it was called the Shooting Stars competition. The skills competition is good and all, but I don't know, it gets a little after a little bit, and years in, years out watching it, it just doesn't do it for me anymore. LeBron and Steph finally played on the same team. For Team LeBron, Damian Lillard went crazy, and it was amazing again to watch Damian Lillard and Steph Curry pull from half court like it was nothing, while barely even hitting rim on some of the shots that went in. Giannis went perfect from the field and looked like he was having a blast while doing it. My only critique of the weekend would have to be Team Durant. And not saying that they aren't great players or anything like that, because, of course, they're all-stars. But for me, it just looked like they didn't want to be there. It looked as though they were just ready to get out of here. And I feel like it could have been one of the best all-star games we've seen in a minute. I mean, just look at last year's and how fantastic of a game that was. All the players just wanted to be there. They were excited to play. And in the fourth quarter, it was some of the best all-star game defense. It was probably the best all-star game that I had seen in my lifetime, my short lifetime. But yeah, I just feel like it could have. I don't think it could have matched last year's because, of course, there weren't fans or there were rarely any fans in attendance during the game. But I feel like it could have matched the intensity wise had Team Durant just, seemed like they wanted to be there, which, of course, LeBron had talked about weeks prior that he wasn't excited, and Kawhi said the same thing. And, they have the right to say that, but at the same time, LeBron didn't even play in the second half, but he still had fun with it. He still was on the bench. He was still high-fiving and laughing with the guys. Team Durant just seemed as though they were there and they were just ready to get out over with. So I feel as though if they would have gave us a couple more highlights, if guys were even pulling like Steph Curry and Damian Lillard would have, or if we would have seen a few more highlight dunk opportunities from those guys, or, just anything, flashy passes, I feel like the game could have been a lot better. It just felt like whenever Team Durant got the ball, they were pulling from three or throwing lobs to Zion. And for me, it just didn't do it, and I wasn't excited to watch them on offense. Really, had it not been for Team LeBron and the effort and energy that they brought, this probably would have been one of the worst All-Star weekends. And lastly, on the All-Star weekend tip is people have been talking about the dunk contest and talking about how bad it was and how boring it was and this, that, and the third. And I just want to let it be known now. The dunk contest was not boring. And me being a basketball player, I feel like I can speak differently than just the average fan or just somebody who, is watching, because I appreciate guys like Cassius Stanley and Obi Toppin and Anthony Simons doing the dunk contest because, it takes a lot for you to get out there with a competition that we've been so spoiled with the past few years, with guys like Zach LaVine and Aaron Gordon and Derrick Jones Jr., with them doing their things the past few years. It takes guts to get out there because in a sense, you won't be able to match what happened in 2016. You won't be able to match what happened back when Vince Carter was doing the dunk contest. But you still get out there and you try and put on the best show that you can possible. So I feel like it's disrespectful to those guys when we as fans come and be like, this was boring, or that's all he did. Like, those dunks were really, really difficult. I seen some people talking about the first dunk Cassius Stanley got, and he got a 44 on it, which was surprising. But, he got a 44 on a dunk that he threw up. The same leg that he jumped off of was the same leg he went through and completed the dunk. Like, that is immensely hard. And so, I feel like the dunk contest wasn't as bad as people made it seem. Like I said, we've just been so spoiled the past few years that it gets harder and harder for fans to be impressed year in and year out. And then, like I said, on top of that, there were very few fans in attendance. Years past, we've had celebrities all lined up on the front row to watch the contest and the game. So, no, All-Star Weekend wasn't bad. It was actually pretty good, but for me personally, I think it showed how important of a role that the fans have in the experience every year, because without them, we get like we had this year, where it wasn't terrible, but it just isn't the same. And so that's the only thing that sucks. Now, I want to get into the Nets and Blake Griffin. I don't even have any notes wrote up for this. I'm literally just going to have to speak from the brain on this one, because I remember seeing the notification come through, and I remember seeing him get his contract bought out or whatever, and people were saying the Nets were the front runners. Me being a LeBron fan, you can say this is a little biased, but I just want to say, if the Nets win this championship, I would find it very, very hard to give the ring the respect it probably deserves, because for me being a basketball player, I know if I was in the NBA and I got a ring, and people talk about LeBron's ring and from the bubble this year, and even Durant's rings in Golden State's, how those don't count or they're not the same. If I was in the NBA, I would be like, man, I got a ring. It really doesn't matter what you think. A championship is a championship. But this ring, if the Nets were able to get it, I think for me, it would be the first time I would look at a team and be like, I don't know how much I qualify that ring as actually being like a championship ring. Just because even when LeBron had super teams in Miami, and even when they did this, he still had to go through crazy amounts of talent. They still had to go through the Celtics. They still had to go through the Warriors sometimes in some games, and the Warriors aren't the Warriors that we know now, but they were a really good up-and-coming team. Oklahoma City had 3 good players, and even the Spurs, they had a lot of good players. The Pacers were a good team, so it wasn't just like the entire fabric of the league was shifted to Miami. And if we're being honest, LeBron might have been the best player in the league at that time, but it wasn't like they were just loaded up on talent. They had LeBron, D-Wade, and Chris Bosh. Chris Bosh was hurt a lot of the time. He was very effective when he was on the court, but, at the same time, it's not like he was Chris Bosh from Toronto. And even D-Wade took a back seat, and he was an all-star still, don't get me wrong, but it wasn't like we were getting prime D-Wade prior to LeBron coming there when he won the championship with Shaq. So, and then around them, they had guys like Mario Chalmers, Norris Cole, Shane Battier, Ray Allen. It's not like that team was just stacked. But, I mean, you look at this Nets team that they now, and the potential starting 5 that they could put out on the floor, and even the players that they'll have coming off the bench, I feel it is the most lopsided roster of players that I have seen personally in the past few years. And I would have to relate it back to whenever we saw KD come to Golden State the first time. Because, I mean, you got Kyrie Irving, James Harden, Kevin Durant, Joe Harris, Blake Griffin now. You got Spencer Dinwiddie. What's dude's name? It's slipping my mind right now. But the guy they just got in the trade, Landry Shamet. It's just, to me, at some point as a competitor, you have to want to kind of go out for it. I feel like even in LeBron's case, I don't really like it when superstars team up like that. If you can get 1 or 2 to possibly even 3 superstars on the team, cool, that's fun. Go at it. But whenever we're loading up, and I know this isn't the same, Lob City, Blake Griffin, and DeAndre Jordan, and, KD's still coming off of injury, but he's still playing at a high level. I just feel like I would have just loved to see a LeBron versus KD and an AD versus Kyrie matchup. And even with James Harden coming there, as much as I didn't really like that move, I feel like I still would have been more excited to see that rather than I am to see, the finals matchup that I'm predicting this is going to be, with it being the Lakers and Nets. But I will tell you one thing. If LeBron James and the Lakers are able to win this NBA Finals, there will be no doubt in my mind that LeBron James is the greatest basketball player to ever touch a basketball. Ever. And I will never want to hear another form or fashion of LeBron James slander, because the teams that he would have had to go through to get his rings, and people want to talk about his record all the time, but the teams that he would have beat and the teams that would have beaten him are miles ahead of teams that MJ would have ever played. And that could just be me being biased, but hey, I'm just keeping it honest. But getting away from my personal feelings on the Nets, I think that as an organization, from an organization standpoint, you have to bump what everybody else says and what the fans kind of say, in a sense, because at the end of the day, they're not the ones writing your checks. They're not the ones fighting for your job. You have to do what's best for you and your organization. So from that standpoint, they're not loading up on anything. They're just putting themselves in the best position possible to win a championship, which at the end of the day is the ultimate goal. If every team could get a Blake Griffin, could get a Kyrie Irving, and all stack them up on one team, they probably would. You know why? Because the goal is to win a championship. So in that standpoint, I can't blame the Nets because they're just doing their job. They're just loading up on talent and making the best team possible to win an NBA Finals. But from a fan standpoint, can't say I really like the move too much. But, hey, to each his own. I just want to see some good, healthy basketball played this season. So, lastly, I'm going to get into my midseason predictions, or quote-unquote midseason predictions, as basketball will spark back up tomorrow night. So from here, I'm going to say that Joel Embiid will win MVP. The season that he's having is crazy. And I even feel like no matter, it would take him to have a disastrous part of the second half of the season for him to not win MVP. I know a couple weeks ago I said that the Joker would be the MVP, but Joel Embiid has just separated himself from the pack. So it would take for him to play astronomically bad and for LeBron or Nikola Jokic to play astronomically good for him to lose that race. I think it's his race to lose, and at the end of the day, I think he will ultimately win it. Again, I think the Nets and Lakers meet in the finals. Can't really give a prediction on that, because I really hope that both teams are healthy when we get to that point. And so I don't want to make any predictions until both teams can get healthy and we can actually start seeing teams play together. Because, hell, we haven't even seen how Blake Griffin is going to fit, and we don't even know what the Lakers are going to do before the trade deadline next week or in a couple weeks. So we'll have to see, but I do think at the end of the day, they will be the ones to meet in the finals. I think LaMelo Ball wins Rookie of the Year. The numbers that he is putting up is crazy. And I was actually talking to one of my buddies last night, and it was just like, it's crazy to watch LaMelo actually be in the league and do the things that he's doing. Because I, for one, again, being a basketball fanatic, have seen him grow over the past couple of years. So seeing to him to where he's at now is amazing just from a fan's perspective, and I wish him nothing but the best. And the Hornets are slowly becoming one of the teams that you have to watch or you have to see a highlight from every night. And I credit that to their staff and the team that they put together, but also LaMelo Ball and Miles Bridges for making the Hornets a very, very exciting team to watch. I think the Warriors sneak into the playoffs, and not only do they sneak into the playoffs, but I think that they give whoever they play in the first round trouble. I don't know who they'll play in the first round. Can't give a prediction right now because I think right now they're sitting in the 9th seed, and I do expect them to rise to probably about the 8th through 6th spot, just depending on how the rest of the West plays this year. But like I said, I do think they get into the playoffs, and they'll give a team fits. I don't think that they will win their first round matchup, but I do think that they'll give a team troubles and might walk away with a game or two in the first round. I think the Bucks reached the conference finals. I know that they had a little blunder last year with the Miami Heat, but I anticipate them making the conference finals this year. I think that Chris Middleton and Drew Holiday and company, and Dante DiVincenzo is one of my favorite players to watch in the league right now. He plays both sides of the ball. So I think they have a really, really solid team, and they're really solid enough to make the conference finals this year. Of course, if that's the case, I think they'll have to run into the Nets, and I don't think anybody in the East is beating the Nets. The Miami Heat, I think, will get better. I know Jimmy Butler missed a lot of the early season with an injury and stuff, so I'm expecting them to get a lot better, but I think it'll be the Bucks and Nets in the conference finals, with the Nets winning that one pretty easy. I think that they probably win it in 6, but I think it'll be an easy 6 if that makes sense. And then lastly, I think that the Lakers and Clippers meet in the conference finals from the West, and I think that the Lakers win in 6. I know last year the Nuggets spoiled a Lakers-Clippers Western Conference Finals, so I'm really, really excited to finally get to see these teams play each other in a conference finals playoff atmosphere. Hopefully we are able to get a lot more fans in the building and in attendance. Hopefully we can get this COVID stuff out of the way or slow it down a lot more, because me personally being a fan, I miss seeing the fans. The fans really make the sport what it is, and so I'm really anxious to get them back in the building so we can get actual playoff atmosphere back. But like I said, I think the Lakers and Clippers meet in the conference finals, and the Lakers win in 6. And that's going to do it for today's show. Thank you guys for stopping by and chilling with me today. Once again, if you want to connect with me or have any questions, please feel free to hit me up on Instagram at TKVS Podcast or Twitter at Kalen Vasher Show. Hope you guys enjoy the rest of your evening. And until next time, I'm out.